Out of the dust, the children of God were made. And out of the tiniest of seeds, a tree came forth, the tree of life, giving the knowledge of good and evil. From those children and tree, we are shown hope through the smallest beginnings. Our story begins in a desert place, the land of Judea, where the smallest of hope began. A woman called Hannah had a deep sadness. She lived with her family in the desert. Her home was lovely, and she loved her husband, and he adored her. Hannah had all she could hope for, except for one thing. She could not have children.
Hannah, why won't you eat? Why are you so sad? Isn't my love worth 10 sons?
I love you, beloved, but my heart longs for a child of our own. The women at the well mock me, and I long for our own son.
Each night, Hannah prayed, asking God to give her a child.
Lord, if you look upon me, your servant, and give me a child, the child will be yours all the days of their life.
The Lord heard her cry and answered her prayer. Hannah would have a son, but not just any ordinary boy. He grew from a babe to a boy and eventually a prophet. He would be a prophet, God's messenger to his people.
Mama, I want to play and be just like the other children. Maybe I'll be a carpenter or a shepherd.
Samuel, I made a promise to God that you would belong to him in all that you do. Go and be of service to Eli, the priest of our temple. You will now be among the prophets and live in the temple.
Samuel grew up in the temple and soon was a young man.
Eli, why do you call me? It's late in the night.
I have not called you. Go back to sleep.
Samuel, wake.
Eli, what do you need? Why do you wake me with your voice?
You're having night terrors. Return to sleep.
Samuel.
Eli, I still hear you. You keep calling me.
Samuel, the voice must be God. Next time, listen and pray. Say to God, speak, for your servant hears.
The Lord called out to Samuel once more.
Wake.
And this time Samuel said,
Speak, for your servant hears.
From that day forth, Samuel became the voice of God, sharing God's mercies and hope for God's people. Not only would he share God's news, but Samuel would guide kings, for without the voice of God, humanity finds itself lost. Samuel would be God's messenger. Samuel grew in stature and became the voice of God to the people. The people came to Samuel to speak on their behalf.
We need
Samuel,
more
we're hungry, Samuel. Samuel, help us. Give us some food. We're starving. The people are starving.
Samuel.
God hears your cry and will provide for his people.
In the distant lands, other tribes and people lived and saw that the God of Israel was good and cared for his people. They also knew God was powerful, which made other tribes fearful. The fiercest of the tribes, the Philistines, began to grumble.
The God of Israel gives generously to his people. Aren't the Jews the people who were once slaves? How were they freed from Pharaoh?
Why, yes, their God conquered Pharaoh by bringing many plagues to Egypt. Their God even parted the Red Sea, allowing his people to escape.
We must conquer the Jews and their God. We do not want the same curse of the plagues to come upon us, and certainly we do not want to be their slaves. We need a plan.
Their God remains in an ark. Simply sneak into their camp and steal the ark. Then we will possess their powerful God, and he will serve us.
And so the Philistines, in their desire to control God, snuck into the Israelites' camp and captured the ark. When the Jews awoke and realized the Philistines had stolen the ark, the people ran to Samuel.
Samuel! Samuel, our God has been taken away from us. We have been conquered by the Philistines. What shall we do?
Samuel thought and prayed.
We must take our ark back. We need someone to lead us. Tell God we need a king just like everyone else.
We need a king that is powerful and who will protect us from our enemies.
The people of Israel did not need a king. God was already their true king. Nevertheless, Samuel spoke with God, and God gave the people what they wanted. God knew the people would not be satisfied or come to know God as their true king without showing them the way.
Samuel, tell the people they will be given a king, not the true king, but a king which they desire.
God has heard your cries and will appoint Saul, a very handsome and strong man, as your king.
The people cheered and were pleased. Long live the king! Little did they know that Saul would in fact show himself to be a king who would lead in fear and jealousy, much like Pharaoh. He would be known as the king with a dark cloud overhead.
Long live the king!
As the days continued under the reign of Saul, the enemies of God began to surround the Israelites. Samuel prayed and pleaded with Saul to follow God's lead.
Saul, you must gather our troops and follow God's lead against the Philistines. They have taken the ark, the place in which God dwells.
No. We are safe here in our land. Our enemies are far away and have no power here.
My lord, we have sent out our scouts, and the Philistines mock God and are beginning to move in on us.
Samuel, you always bear such sad news. It's not good for my temper. Only come to me with jokes from the villages. The people always have problems. I want to hear happy stories.
Saul, you are king of God's people. You must listen to their cry and to the desires of God. We are surrounded by our enemies.
Oh, Samuel, you take your job all too seriously. Why don't you take some sweets and have some grapes? That will cheer you up. Return tomorrow with better news, happier news, maybe some jokes.
In those days, to keep Saul calm, Jonathan, the son of Saul, brought his best friend David to court to play calm music during the days of the Philistines.
Jonathan, I hear of the enemies gathering closer. We must do something about this. The Philistines have stolen our most sacred ark. Surely you can speak to your father.
I
will try. He angers so quickly and does not listen. He only wants the spoils of the land, happy tales, and to be admired.
I am hearing from the shepherds. The Philistines are drawing near.
Let me speak with my father and see what I can do. Father, may I speak with you?
Yes, my son. What have you to say?
It's about my friend David.
The little harp player?
Yes, my best friend.
Go on.
You see, Father, David is the son of a shepherd, and they wander beyond our camp with their sheep. Reports are coming from the shepherds that the Philistines are gathering and moving closer to our camp.
Nonsense! The Philistines have what they want, the ark. And they seem perfectly satisfied. Now, be a good boy and bring me more grapes.
Father, I am serious, and David would not lie to me. He is my best friend. There are rumors that the Philistines have a giant, a man larger than any tree or mountain. The Philistines use the giant to conquer people throughout the land.
A giant? That is impossible. David must be telling you stories. You know, those shepherds, they become lonely and make up tales.
Father, David would not lie, and I have heard the same stories myself. The people in court are talking. You are the king. You must help your people.
Enough! You are beginning to sound like Samuel. There is no giant and no enemies upon us. Now, tell me about the people in villages who love me. The ones that call me hero.
Jonathan, Samuel, and David went to bed that evening praying for Saul to not be hardened like Pharaoh and listen to God's direction. The sun rose the next day, and with it brought grave news.
Saul, the Philistines are upon us. They have surrounded us now for 40 days. They have a giant with them called Goliath.
Why didn't you wake me sooner? Wait! Did you say a giant?
Yes, a giant. A man larger than any tree or mountain in our valley.
Gather all men of wisdom, our warriors, priests, and prophets.
Priests? Warriors? King Saul, let us gather in prayer and seek the wisdom of the Lord.
No, I am king, and I will say how we will defeat those pesky Philistines and their giant. Servants, bring me my clothes.
Soon the news spread throughout the land. God's people were surrounded by their enemies.
Jonathan, we are surrounded by the Philistines, and they mock us. Let's do something.
My father has gathered Samuel, all the men of wisdom, warriors, and prophets to defeat the giant.
I will pray. We must turn to the God who created the heavens and the earth.
David, I wish there was more I could do. I must leave now. My father is calling me to court. Please pray.
David gathered his harp and left to the fields to be with the shepherds. From the fields, the fires of the Philistines could be seen. David and his brothers prayed, and soon Samuel heard from God.
Let us gather our entire army and defeat the giant before us.
My men won't fight. They say the giant will crush them in just one step.
We have no power over the ark or the Philistines. We can do nothing.
I wish there was more I could do.
No, not my son. Send word out to the people. Tell them whomever is willing to take down our enemy, I will reward them, and they will become the heir to my throne. Samuel, send a message out to the shepherds. They are tough men, capable of defeating lions, bears, and wolves. Surely there is a man who will be enticed by my throne.
I will pray and seek out a warrior, my king.
Samuel prayed and listened for God. He soon spoke to Samuel in his dreams.
Samuel, seek the son of Jesse, the least likely. I will show the foolishness of man is God's wisdom.
The next day, Samuel went to the fields and sought out the sons of Jesse, seeking the chosen one.
Shepherds, I seek one of Jesse's boys.
20 shepherds stepped forward.
I seek one who is willing to go against the giant.
All the shepherds, except for one, stepped back.
Are you David, the harp player in court? Are you willing to defeat the giant and return the ark to our camp? Are you the one? The smallest and youngest of you all?
The shepherds remained in silence, with their heads bowed. David stepped forward, and the Spirit of God came upon him.
Here I am. I am not afraid. I know the God who goes before me put the stars in the sky, created the heavens and the creatures of the earth. We have a God who has defeated those who wish to keep us captive.
You are the chosen one.
Samuel returned to Saul with David, the only one willing to go before the giant. When the sun rose, the people gathered on the battlefield.
Samuel, is David truly the only one willing to face the giant in all my kingdom? Will not another shepherd face the Philistines? Surely there is one larger in stature and one who is able to actually wear armor.
David is the chosen one. Out of Jesse's shoot, our true king will come. David will defeat the giant.
Now, David, I know you play the harp, is it? Have you ever used a sword or bow and arrow? What do you propose you will use to defeat such a giant?
If our God is for us, who can be against us? Our God freed us from Pharaoh, gave us hope through the rainbow, and made every living creature. I have all I need to defeat Goliath.
A rock and a sling? David, if you defeat this giant, someday you will sit on my throne and have the hand of my daughter. This I promise.
David stepped out onto the battlefields. For miles, you could see the village surrounded by the Philistines, mocking Saul and his people.
Samuel, are you sure about this? What will we do once the giant has defeated David? Shall I call upon my warriors to shield us to safety?
Trust in the Lord. He has chosen David, the unlikely, the smallest of men, to bring down the giant.
Jonathan, prepare the troops to protect us and guide us out of the kingdom upon David's death.
David stepped onto the field and approached Goliath. The Jews and Philistines cheered and laughed at the sight of David.
Is that a child or a man-child? It's just so small.
Surely Saul did not send out a boy.
Look, he's wearing his white shirt. Must be surrendering. Where'd you get that? The surrender store?
The people cheered and laughed at David and his stature. But David remained steadfast and prayed.
Surely the God of Moses, Abraham, and Isaac will be among us this day.
Do not fear, for I am with you. Out of your line, the true king will come. One who will be just, kind, and full of mercy. One who is a true servant king.
David walked onto the battlefield of poppies and searched the field.
What does the boy search for? Flowers? Soon you will be covered in the poppies of this flower field. I'm gonna squash you like a bug.
In that moment of laughter, David rose and shot a stone directly at the giant. The giant fell, and the earth shook. The people fell silent. David approached the giant with no fear, but trust in God.
What has happened? Jonathan, go out and see! Our enemy has been defeated?
David approached the giant and stood right on his belly.
The giant has fallen, and we have once again been set free.
The crowd gathered around and soon realized the giant was no longer a threat because he was dead. The people cheered and lifted David up, and the people began to praise David. Saul watched from a distance while the people cheered. Saul, in his jealousy, desired to exile David, but soon realized the people loved David. Saul would keep David close, but only out of fear and envy. Soon, David would be crowned king himself, as the prophet declared, out of Jesse's shoot, the true king will soon appear. David was a good king, but like the kings that came before him, he too became just like them. Soon, he no longer listened to God. He wanted to be God and rule on his own. As the story goes, we see the people, just like Adam and Eve, hide until the giant is defeated. We too hide when we forget we have a true king who has conquered death and the devil, putting himself rightfully back on his throne. A true king reigns and has already come. His name is Jesus.